This is the Gen Y Leaders Podcast. Welcome to the Gen Y Leaders Podcast, where we guide millennials to become the next generation of business leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Eric Huey, and multiple times a month, we bring you interviews from high-performing millennials who are challenging perceptions and changing expectations of our generation. Our mission is to help you overcome fear, take action, and go confidently in the direction of your dreams. It's time to start preparing now, mainly because 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day, which will create a vacuum of career opportunities that you've been waiting for. Will you be ready? Alex, thanks for joining us on the Gen Y Leaders Podcast.
Happy to be here, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. So for listeners, if you could just explain who you are and what you do, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I am I'm Alex Olson, and I am a real estate investor. I'm also a real estate agent, commercial real estate agent for large apartment complexes. And, I've been doing that here for, a couple of years now.
Yeah, very nice. Why real estate? You've got a kind of a variety of background, as we talked about earlier, before we started recording. Why real estate over anything else right now?
Right now, it's important to take a big picture look at where the world's going, I think. And I don't want to make it too big of a deal, but, we were just talking about the stock market and how that's very volatile. Real estate historically, if you're investing it for the long term, has been very solid.
Yeah.
And you get appreciated. I mean, there's all these different aspects, which I'm sure you guys have talked about before, but you get at least I call it the 4-pronged approach on real estate. You got your tenants paying down your mortgage. Okay. You've got your cash flow that hopefully that the property is making money after all the income and expenses. You've got appreciation. The property's going up in value, hopefully more than inflation rate, especially right now. And then there's a fourth one, and that is that you can use all those different aspects I just talked about, and use that equity that you've built up creatively. You can either take it out, or you can leave it in the property and pay it off faster. You can use it to buy more property. So anyway, that's really why I'm big into real estate right now.
I would love to get more into that, and you alluded to it, but talk about real estate investing versus stock market investing and all that. But I think it might help to set this up, a little more for listeners. I think kind of the common passerby might not know what real estate investing is, might think of realtors. So maybe talk a little bit about that differentiation first, as far as what realtors do versus what someone like you does.
Yeah, so there's really two different types of real estate agents. You have your single family home or owner occupied real estate agent, and that person is helping a family, a couple, a person, whoever it is, get into a house, buy a house, or sell somebody else's house as an owner occupied, meaning that they're living there, just like many of us here in America live in a house you own. Mm-hmm. So that's one type of real estate agent. Then the other type of agent, which is what I am, which is an investment sales real estate agent, which is my sole purpose is helping other investors find real estate properties, mostly multifamily, meaning apartments. And that could be a duplex, that could be a fourplex, that could be 20 units, 100 units, but find, locate, and sell those to fellow investors.
Yeah.
So with that investment, then you are making money off of that property, and that generates revenue for you.
Yeah. Thanks for that differentiation. I think that hopefully helps listeners. So you alluded to it already at the beginning of our call, and there's there's a lot going on with the stock market in this pandemic. We saw the stock market drop 20-30%, just in a matter of weeks, right at the kind of the peak height of the pandemic. So how important do you think it is for millennials to start real estate investing, now and throughout their life?
I think it's very important as a diversified investment strategy, and maybe even as your sole or your first investment strategy. You got to be very careful with how you get into real estate investing. But I think when you look at, and you could, there's books out there, there's blogs out there that all talk about, X% of the wealthiest people in the world, or X% of the wealth in the world is generated or lies within real estate. And so you rarely hear that same statistic is within the stock market, right? And a stock market is just something that's electronic, and you own a piece of a company, whether it's Microsoft or Exxon or whatever the case may be, but you really don't have any control over that investment. You don't have control over what those board members are doing and how they're acting. Yeah. And so that's risky, very risky in and of itself, in my opinion. Yeah. Whereas real estate is something that's tangible. It sits there. It appreciates in value, even through the 2008 through 2010 recession. There was still a lot of property that appreciated in value, and especially on the multifamily investment sales side, those properties were still generating cash flow, because guess what? People need a place to live. Yep. No matter what's going on in the world, people need a place to live. And so multifamily investing is always going to be something that at least has value.
Yeah. Yeah. Great points. I think it's so funny because, financial advisors will say, well, make sure you have a diversified portfolio and, spread out your investments. But what no one ever talks about is, diversifying your income with, before the fact, before you get the money in the stock market. So it's like, how can you build additional revenue streams? And I think with, this pandemic going on, it has exposed that a lot of people do, in fact, need an additional, 1, 2, 3 revenue streams to support their family, extended family, loved ones if they're caretakers. So I think it's definitely wise to be investing. So I'm glad you touched on that. So on that topic, I guess specifically what we want to talk about today is how millennials can start investing without using their own money. I think, again, right now is kind of that perfect time because unfortunately some people are hitting rock bottom and they need a way out. So I think this is a kind of a really key episode that hopefully a lot of our listeners can grasp onto. So talk a little bit about that as far as like this, 0 to 1, starting out of the gate. How can millennials get started investing without any of their own money?
Yeah, the awesome thing about real estate is you can be very creative with it. Sky's the limit. And so the one thing I always tell people is to never take no for an answer. And that applies with real estate. That applies with creative financing. So how you go from 0 to 1 is, first of all, you got to do a little bit of research on what real estate is, how you make money on it. You got to kind of know the numbers of the cash flow side of the business. But once you've got a grasp of what real estate investing is, then the best way to look at it is you have probably somewhere in your life, your resources that's part of you, something that has value. And for example, in my side of the house, I had a house that I built that had a lot of equity that remained inside of it even after I built it. And so a person can actually tap into that equity in your house. I'm making this up, but let's say you have a house that you have purchased, and you purchased it for $100,000, and you only owe $60,000 on it. You have $40,000 in equity sitting there. And you can then go out to a bank, reach out to a bank and say, hey, look, I have $40,000 in equity in there. I would like to take out either all of that, which is kind of rare for banks to allow you to take all of that out. Yeah. But typically they will allow you to take out up to 80% of the value. So in this case, you would be able to take out $20,000 because you'd still have $80,000 versus $100,000 home. And so now you have this $20,000 that you didn't have before. It's probably on either an interest only payment or on a where you don't have to pay any fees or anything on it until you actually start using it. And you can use that $20,000 to then therefore go out and invest into real estate at also 80% or 75% of the value of that house. So it's a way that you're not using any of your savings or anything else to go out and get a piece of real estate.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. One I'm sure not many people are familiar with. How's that work at scale? And when you get, multiple properties down the road, it sounds like it's definitely a long-term strategy for wealth building, kind of generational wealth versus any type of quick money.
Yeah, this is definitely not a get rich quick scheme by any stretch of the imagination. You're never, well, I shouldn't say never. I would never bank on real estate being a get rich scheme. Even the house flipper people understand it's a process and takes time. But so what you're doing is you're buying property, and then, as I talked about at the beginning, then once you have a property, you start on those 4 different pillars of generating income or giving you creative ways to use that property. So just like your personal residence that you took out $20,000, eventually you can do that with your investment property as well. As it pays down, as it cash flows, you use that money to invest in yet another property. And so doing all of those different things, you continue to build your real estate portfolio, and you can buy and you can sell them depending on your life needs. I always prefer the buy and hold model, but you have options.
Yeah. What's your advice? Go the commercial route with businesses, or go residential with traditional, single homes or something like that?
So my recommendation, if I was just starting out as a real estate investor and I had, I could do whatever I wanted kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would go, the first thing I would do is identify a fourplex.
Okay.
So 4-unit building. And with that 4-unit building, you can actually get an FHA loan on that building, and you would owner occupy one of those units. So you're buying a fourplex. You then live in one of the units, which allows you to get the lowest rate and the lowest money down, usually 3.5%. So instead of in a normal investment sales transaction, you need 20, and right now it's more like 25% down of that purchase price. But if you're doing a fourplex, threeplex, or duplex or single family home, you can actually get a loan for 3.5% down.
Wow.
So that's hardly, let's say even if it's $400,000, that's not a whole lot of money compared to, what you normally have to put down.
Sure.
And so then once you're into that fourplex, you rent out the other 3 units that are all paying for your mortgage. So you're living in a house for free. You're probably making some money.
Yeah.
And if you want to take that to the next level, if you're single or you and your significant other are, really want to jumpstart your wealth building for generations to come, you not only are renting out those other 3 units, you can also rent out the bedrooms in your own unit.
Huh.
And then you have what I call the ultimate house hack. People talk about house hacking a lot in real estate. And so now then you have every piece of that real estate is generating revenue for you, other than maybe the one room that you're living in.
Yeah.
But that, and then after a year, the federal government requires that you actually live in that property for a year before you can do it again. You can actually take that same model, assuming you have the down payment, the 3.5%, and go to another, go do it again on another fourplex.
Yeah.
So then at that point you have 8 units, and then you can do it again. It sounds easy. I mean, it's a lot harder than it sounds. But if I was 20, 22 or whatever, and either married or not married, but just starting out, this is exactly what I would do, because here looking 15 years later, I would have a slew of properties that I hardly spent any of my own money on.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for the insights. That's a very actionable takeaway that listeners can act on. So really appreciate that. Where can people find, properties, investors, especially if they're not using their own money? What are some general tips to get started?
A couple places. The first place I would look at to get started is a website called Bigger Pockets. And it's been around for, I don't know if it's been 10 years yet, but it's been around for a long time. And they have information on there for very, very beginners. They have very active forums that people can go on there and post questions and do new member introductions and say, hey, look, this is what I'm looking for. They have books that they recommend, all these different tools that are all free. And so it's a great platform. They also have a weekly podcast. I think it's a weekly podcast that you can listen to that's only about real estate investing. And it's also geared very much towards a new investor.
Yeah.
So that's kind of step one. Step two is start messing around with Zillow. And on Zillow, I don't know, it depends on the location you're in, but you can use Zillow for searching that you want to buy multifamily property and apartments. That's two search options in Zillow. And from that, you can actually then draw on a map the locations that you want to stay within. Whether it's downtown in your area or the suburb that you live in, whatever it is, you can actually zone in, and then every time a property pops up, you get notified that, hey, this property is now available, and it gives you the information on it, just like when you're looking to buy a home. So it's an awesome tool. It's free again. You've got it at your fingertips. That's what I use to get notified of things that are hitting the real estate market. And then a third one, which is more for advanced, I think I say slightly more advanced people, is once you've been on Bigger Pockets, you know what real estate investing is, you know how it works. Then you've also been messing around on Zillow, so you know what properties are out there. And then the third one is, once you get past all that, you actually can start reaching out to these brokers and agents that are listing these properties in your area, and ask some questions about it.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to get, I can get into the advanced stuff. You're going to want to have either where's your financing coming from, and how are you going to manage the property. Those are the two questions that an agent is going to need to know before they take you seriously. Yeah. But that should get you started down the road.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's dive more into the not using your own money aspect. So what do those conversations look like? Who are you going to for money? How do you find those people? All that.
Yes. So from the banking side, that's where you come. Like I said, if you own your own home and you've got some equity in your house, there's many different banks probably in your area. Usually a community bank or a credit union will loan against that. A lot of times the note holder, meaning the bank that you're paying your mortgage to, will be able to help you get in the right direction for that. So do research on your line of credit side of the house. And then once you're either tapped out or maybe you don't own your own home, how do you get into properties that way?
Yeah.
The next step is what people call seller financing. And those are harder to do and find, but the key there is persistence. So what seller financing means is there's somebody who's trying to sell either a single family investment property or a multifamily property. Maybe they're not getting the price they want for it. Maybe it's got issues that they're not willing to repair. Whatever the case may be, it's been sitting on the market for a long period of time. Or you find out from your friend or uncle that so-and-so has a multifamily property that they can't sell. And so you approach that particular seller and you say, hey, look, what if I gave you the price you wanted for your property, maybe even more than the price you wanted, but I want you, I only want to pay rent to you for a year or 2 or 6 months. And during that time, when I'm paying rent to you, I will fix up the property or I will get it rented for us, and you get to keep, basically you're subletting at that point. So it's called a lease purchase option.
Mm-hmm.
I come to the seller and say, hey, look, I'm going to buy this property at your asking price. However, it's going to be 2 years before I can do that. So I'll pay you a monthly rent of, a certain amount that's, favorable to both of us. Everything in real estate should be a win-win in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then you take that and you fix it up, or whatever the pain point of that property might be. You take that time over the lease purchase option to get it fixed up and increasing the value on it. Once the term's up, you already have a purchase price set in stone from when you first came to the seller and said, hey, I'll pay you X dollars for it. And hopefully in the year or 2 years time, that property has appreciated in value. And so you go to a bank and you can purchase that to finance it, and you've already got built-in equity into it while you've used the additional cash flow from that property as your savings. And maybe you're doing some other savings aspect as well during that time to make sure you have that down payment amount.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thanks for a little more insight there. So there's, of course, advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons to everything in life. What are some pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages to getting in real estate?
The pros are, we've talked a lot about them, but, I like it because you have control over your own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a money machine, at least from my side of the things. And then, of course, you're going to make a few bucks doing it, and it's going to appreciate well for you. And in 30 years, hopefully you should have it paid off. And you've got this asset sitting there that, let's say you've got 5 of them that are worth $200,000. You've got $1 million paid off.
Yeah.
That's also probably generating cash flow for you. That's better than most people's stock market account. And you didn't have to pay them off. Somebody else paid them off for you. Tenant paid all the money off, basically.
Yeah.
And then so that's the pros. The con side is, things can always go bad. You could have, heaven forbid, a fire happens in a property, especially if you've got an older property, and that could wipe out the building. Now, of course, that's where your insurance comes in, and you're thankful at that point that the building is, something that it's not your personal residence and all those kind of things that you're thankful for. But that's some of the downsides of real estate investing. Just like any business, you have potential for lawsuits. That somebody could find a way to or reason to sue you for, right or wrong. It happens. You could overpay for a property and get in over your head on what it might be worth and make some mistakes there. So there is a very fine balance between pros and cons on owning real estate. But I think history shows you, and just other people that are very wealthy show you that real estate is a great investment despite the risks.
Definitely. What's been one of your proudest moments in real estate?
My proudest moment when I am investing in real estate is when I have a fully occupied building and it looks good. I have great tenants. And so I was able to accomplish that with my first investment in my duplex. I bought it as a vacant building and put, $2,500 into it, did some minor work to it, and got it leased up in 45 days. And that was my proudest moment, was, wow, I can actually do this. Yeah. I didn't know, is anybody going to rent from me? Do I look or sound, where no one wants to rent from me? Can I instill confidence? Sure. And did I buy the right property?
Yeah.
Especially when you have a vacant building, it's like, man, is anybody going to live in here for the rents I think I can get for this?
Yeah.
And so that was my proudest moment, was being able to see that, hey, this thing's going to work.
You brought up a good point as far as building maintenance, either the initial improvements or ongoing, especially if it's a multi-family property, people are living there. And so I think a point a lot of people get hung up on before even getting in real estate is like, well, I don't want the headache of getting a 2 a.m. phone call to go fix a toilet. So talk a little
Mm-hmm.
bit about that as far as like starting off is, does it behoove you to be handy and be able to go fix things, or should people, invest in property managers that go handle that? And if so, is there a percentage fee of, property income? What's that look like?
Yeah, so I love that the 2 a.m. phone call. Hey, someone's got to unplug my toilet for me.
Yeah.
And that starts with avoiding those problems. Starts with having a good lease.
Yeah.
And calling around, asking friends and family, even your own lease that you signed when you rented an apartment at one point. All those are good starting points for having a good lease, because in that lease it talks about plumbing issues and some of these other things. And at least in my lease, it clearly states like water issue is not something that I'm going to respond to as a property manager in the middle of the night. That's not an emergency.
Yeah.
Emergency really is a fire. Even then, you call 911. Any emergencies, you're calling 911. You're not calling me.
Right.
And if you've got a water issue that won't turn off, you call the water company because you're paying the water bill.
Yeah.
Or I show them where all the shutoffs are and everything. And so that's part of real estate, is really having a defined process of how you handle these things. So that's if you're managing it yourself. And you don't have to be super handy, because what I do is, hey, I've got a dishwasher issue. Okay, cool. I'm going to call my plumber and he's going to go over there and scope it out.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I've got my light is no longer working. Okay, cool. I'll call my electrician, have him go over there and scope it out. That's really kind of where you get to a point where you feel more comfortable with doing that. You've developed relationships.
Yeah.
But even if you're not handy, you can, farm all that stuff out. You're going to maybe not make it quite as much money on it.
Yeah.
But you're also going to have a lot more time. So what's your hourly rate for your personal and professional life?
Mm-hmm.
For you to drive out there or go out and scope it out. So you got to kind of weigh those pros and cons.
Yeah.
And so that, again, that's still if you're managing it yourself.
Sure.
And then if you do decide, hey, you know what, I just want to own real estate. I like all the aspects of it, but I never want to talk to people. I hate people, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I'm going to hire a property management company. And typically on the smaller side, so like a single family home on up to maybe 10 units, you're probably looking at 9% or so of the total gross rents.
Mm-hmm.
So if your house rents for $2,000 a month, we'll just round up to 10%. You're looking at spending $200 a month on property management.
Mm-hmm.
And the property manager will do everything. They'll collect the rent. You don't collect any of that stuff. They use all their own technology. They'll obviously schedule all the maintenance. They'll do all the leasing and the walk-ins and the walkthroughs and everything. So that's where their fee comes in. So you really, it's not passive investing still, because you still have to approve certain, things you're spending on it. And if, a toilet's broken, hey, do we put in $100 toilet or do we put in a $300 toilet? So you got to answer those kind of questions.
Right.
But beyond that, the property manager handles the actual property.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. That's awesome insight. Where you mentioned Bigger Pockets, are there any other resources that millennials can go research, read up on to get educated on real estate if they want to get into it?
Yeah, the couple books I would recommend, almost sounds like I work for Bigger Pockets, but I have zero affiliation with them. But Brandon Turner, who's I think he's employed by Bigger Pockets, doesn't matter, but he's got a couple books that I would highly recommend. And one is actually on creative financing, where I got a lot of my ideas from. Okay. And that one is called The Book on No or Low Money Down by Brandon Turner. And that'll walk you through a whole bunch of different options on how to get creative with getting deals financed on real estate. And then he has another book, him and his wife, that is a book on rental property management. And that is a very basic book on step-by-step on how you can manage a property. I think it even includes a whole bunch of forms and even leases and all those kind of things. So those are two starter books from a nuts and bolts side of the house.
Yeah.
And then from a thought process or how you think about real estate, there's a book by Sam Zell, who's a billionaire real estate investor, who's, I don't know how old he is now, he's probably 70 or 80. but he's got a book called "Am I Being Too Subtle?" And it talks about his persistence in real estate and how he got started in it, and how he was, started in college, and he always found ways to do real estate deals rather than ways not to do real estate deals.
Yeah.
So he was buying up everything he possibly could. Now, maybe he got into it on the right time, where stuff was a lot cheaper than it is now, but he still is buying real estate right now. And he has a really good story on thought process and how he got started, and and then he took over property management, and why it was important for him and his family, and it's just a really good book.
Awesome. We'll link those in the show notes for anyone who's interested. Alex, one question I've been trying to ask more to kind of unify our community of millennials that we have is, what is a business ask that you have? Is there anything that you're in need of right now, a person that you're wanting to connect with, a property in a certain location around KC or region that you're looking to get your hands on, or area that you're trying to buy in? Anything like that?
Yeah, I would love to. My investment strategy is pretty strict compared to most people. So I'm always looking for property that is within 2 blocks of a major economic driver.
Okay.
And so that could be, most of the times for me, it's a hospital, university, streetcar, or an entertainment district. Mm-hmm. And so even if you don't have something for sale, if you've seen something that, hey, this building looks kind of crummy, or I drove by this spot and it looks like it, could be sold because it just looks terrible. I just like to know about it and love to talk more. And I think, real estate's relationship-based business, and there's so many opportunities. It's not just about buying and selling. It's helping people, and then one day they're going to help you. So if you just want to talk about real estate, love to chat.
Awesome. And then, lastly, how can people get in contact with you if they want to?
The 2 easiest ways to get in contact with me are finding me on LinkedIn. You can just search for my name, Alex Olson, and you'll find me hopefully right away. Although there's probably lots of me out there, but in the real estate world, I'm all over it. I'm posting all the time. I do videos and those kind of things. So that's the easiest way. And then another way is to email me. You can email me anytime at alex@clemensrealestate.com, and be happy to chat with you about real estate and creative financing for real estate investors. I love talking about it.
Awesome. Alex, thanks so much for your time. We'll link your contact information in the show notes as well. Anything else you want to leave listeners with before we sign off here?
I just recommend getting started in real estate any way you can. If it's a $100,000 duplex, jump on it. Figure out a way to get it done.
Great advice. Thanks for your time, sir, and good luck to you in your career.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Love being here.
That wraps up today's episode. We hope to have brought you some valuable key takeaways. Most importantly, whatever you learned, take action on it. Apply it to your life. Apply it to your career. Motivation and inspiration only come as a result of taking that first step. So if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe on whichever platform you found the show. You can also follow us on all the major social media platforms, or contact us directly at genwhyleaders@gmail.com. That's GENWHY leaders@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Eric Huey, and thanks for listening to the Gen Y Leaders Podcast.